Good evening. Welcome to the February 7th Board of Selectmen meeting. There are a couple of changes to the agenda. Under Town Manager's Report, item number 1 has been removed. And under Selectmen's Report, item number 2, A and C have been removed. So we'll accept the agenda with those.
Move up item 1 earlier in the agenda. I know that we talked about that. No.
Okay, so we'll accept the agenda with those changes and announcements.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This meeting is being video and audio recorded. We're going to get an update from DPW Director about our sewer force main failure, where we are to date.
Good evening, Rob McNeil, DPW. So we have transitioned into, let's say, the recovery and repair effort. Can you put that on? We signed a contract last week with Robert B. Auer for a 45-day contract effort. So it's an expedited schedule to do a complete condition assessment and repair of the 3.5-mile force main from C Street to Surfside Wastewater Treatment Plant. What's shown up on the screen here is the 6 layout sheets, shows essentially a map of the force main. There's 16 separate locations along the force main that the contractor will access and actually excavate access pits down to the force main. A number of them have already been excavated near the treatment plant on the far end. This is because we have the pipe is quite shallow. It's about 2.5 to 3 feet below grade, and the groundwater is down nice and low, so it's a dry pit. The areas that are downtown those are more subject to some challenges with very high groundwater that's influenced by tidal flows, as well as other equipment that's impeding our ability to just readily go in and excavate. So there's a little bit more complex operations scheduled for the in-town pits because of groundwater and largely because of the marine cables from National Grid that are directly over our equipment. So some of the points I wanted to make we have coordination meetings going on with summarizing daily activity at the end of every day. Any questions should be sent through the manager's office and then to me to be able to get questions disseminated out to who needs to answer those and get back to you in a timely fashion. Right now, we are updating the press every Wednesday to keep everyone posted. We have the town manager's offices maintaining a website. There's a web page dedicated to the project that's on the town website. That'll be published as well. And we're doing a weekly update every Wednesday morning. So we're keeping DEP and EPA in the loop. We're working together with house moves and other truck traffic moving around the island since we're down to the single truck route with South Beach Street being closed still. So making progress. I'd urge people to understand that we're trying to work through this as expeditiously as possible. We still are dealing with a lot of unknowns. So the best laid plans may be modified to suit actual field conditions. We're working through plans, as-built plans that exist out there, but the as-built plans don't necessarily line up exactly where some of the things are that we find. Sure. So one thing to let people know is we're going to definitely expect some traffic management to be able to route traffic around these areas when they're underway. So we'll be looking at trying to erect an electronic message board up at the Milestone Rotary for throughout the duration to try to let folks know when any of those patterns change. Again, trying to keep the major truck routes open. We've made some accommodations, shifted some of the pit locations around that were recommended. But other than the South Beach Street corridor from C Street to Oak Street, folks can expect some disruption on Union Street as well. And beyond that, some limited disruption up towards Hooper Farm, out towards the treatment plant, Surfside, and so more to come. I'll certainly give you a weekly update. But in the interim, if anything comes up, if you have any urgent questions, I definitely ask you to get them through the manager's office, and we'll get them turned around, answered right away. Matt?
I guess, yeah, because I was looking at the minutes, from a couple weeks ago, and one of the questions that we'd asked then is this going to impact, will we know the impact once you've done the study, once you've looked through at all the different pipes, will we know that what changes we have to make, if anything, or
Yes.
We'll know how much volume can go through and that type of issue?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I would say, just to specify what I'm answering there, this is going to answer a number of questions as best we can. What is the cause? What was the cause of the failure to begin with? Is the pipe in condition to be repaired, to put back in service? That's the hope, and this contract here gives the contractor and the engineer the ability to put it back in service if those answers are yes, that it's in condition to be able to do that.
And then what about the sizing of the pipe? Is that a separate study that's being ongoing? Or?
So the sizing of the pipe is fixed. It is what it is in the ground. It was a 20-inch cast iron original pipe that was lined down to a 16-inch pipe. So we know those,
Right.
And unless that's
Is that enough for the stress that we're putting on it? Is that enough for the amount of increase that we're doing?
well, again, those are answers that the engineers are going to have to come to before we make that determination.
Okay, but we'll know that.
Yeah, but the other part that's important here is, I think, in concert with the work that's happening right now, the engineer is moving forward with a design, a new design. So it's for a third pipe,
Right.
not just in the event that we have to go that route. If the answer comes back for the condition assessment that no, in fact, the pipe is not suitable for reuse, just for to have an alternate pipe that might be a capital project in the not too distant future. Again, to be able to have redundancy and not have to go through this sort of exercise again.
Rob, are we continuing to monitor the water quality in the harbor? I know we've been doing that. And if so, what are our most current results? And I know we're doing just a certain level of monitoring. We also sent out for a comprehensive review, samples to the state, and what have we gotten back from
Yes.
them?
So thank you for asking that. We had a reaction to the immediate incident. Testing began and it was a daily test that was going on in multiple locations. As things changed, the number of tests went down to 3 locations after a short period of time. That went on daily again. And in our meetings with DEP and EPA, and getting feedback as well from the Division of Marine Fisheries with regard to shellfishing, we ultimately went to a 3-week cycle of testing. So the sampling and water testing is still happening, and the idea now is to bridge the gap between the incident where we actually saw things return to normal, and bridge the gap with continuous testing until we pick up our normal spring testing that runs through summer. So there'll be continuous testing from the time of the incident right through our normal summer schedule. And results-wise, like I said, we've had things return to normal in the harbor area, And more importantly, we've sent off tissue samples from shellfish as well as water samples from those tissue samples locations. And those have been the results of which have come back positively, let's say in a good way, not test results wise. And so we're waiting for a determination from the Division of Marine Fisheries if they're going to make any changes or further notifications.
But we also sent out samples of water for very comprehensive, detailed tests.
We did.
And what results have we gotten from those?
I would say all the results are back. I would bore people to death with exactly what all the tests were and the results, but we're happy to share. They're public.
Okay, I'd like to see that.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Do you want to stay and give your sidewalk?
Sidewalk announcement.
Yeah.
Sure. February 22nd, 6:30. Is it 6:30?
It says 6 minutes.
6 o'clock to 8 o'clock, roughly. February 22nd, Thursday evening. Come join us. Solve the world's problems. Upstairs here in the training room. We had great participation the first time. And, if you have something to say about sidewalks or anything along the Easy Street, Broad Street, and now South Beach Street Extension corridor, we're willing to hear, willing to listen, I should say. And so look forward to seeing people there.
I attended the first one, and I was very impressed with the sort of the process you're using, with the fact that you reached out to everybody, to a lot of the stakeholders there already. I just thought it was a very smart way to go about it, and I think the results are good. I think people are offering things that you hadn't even thought of. I think you guys know
Sure.
have a good, really good handle on what needs to happen down there. But I think the input from the public was really appreciated, and the people that were there were pretty energized by how you did it.
Thank you. No, it was nice to see at the end of it how what kind of common ground we had already established through that process. So thank you. And thank you for attending, both of you. Thanks again. Anything else?
Not at present. Thank you, Rob. Lastly, it's not on here, but the Children's Beach boat ramp is expected to be open later this week.
Great. Okay, that brings us to the public comment portion of our agenda. This is an opportunity to speak about anything that is not otherwise on our agenda. So hearing no public comments, there is no new business that I'm aware of.
If I could, just something we were doing today. David Grace, the director, and people might have seen it downtown with all the smoke that was in the area around South Water Street and everything. We were down doing some smoke testing, assisting DEP, who was on the island today, with some locating and some stuff. But if there was any concerns with all the smoke that was in the area downtown today, that was us smoking out the storm drains and stuff in that area. So.
And David, just
Thanks.
to remind everyone that it's non-toxic.
It's non-toxic. It has no odor to it. It's a very bright white smoke, and it comes rather quickly. So I just needed everyone to know if there was any calls or anything today or complaints. It was us downtown. So
Thanks for announcing it. Okay, we'll move on to approval of minutes.
I move approval.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Approval of payroll warrants and treasury warrants.
Move approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Approval of pending contracts. Are there any questions or comments on the contracts?
Move their approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We have some gift acceptances under consent.
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And we have a resignation and a thank you letter to go out. Make a motion to accept that resignation.
I'll make a motion to accept the resignation.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
And I think I have a suggestion. There was a comment in there about what is this committee doing, and we aren't being supported, and that's why I'm leaving. It's a waste of my time. I think it's something that at some point we should discuss.
Yeah.
I think,
I agree.
okay.
Citizen departmental requests. We have a waiver of the noise bylaw for CNC construction. This is in regard to the dewatering.
I move its approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Nantucket Marine Mammal Conservation request for resolution to oppose offshore oil and gas exploration and extraction activities, including seismic airgun blasting, and to oppose any weakening of the Marine Mammal Protection Act, 1972.
I move to approve.
Second.
Did you want to say something? I think we're going to approve it. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you for coming. Moving on to public hearings, we have a change for Station 21 to go to an annual all alcoholic beverage license. I will open the public hearing.
Yes, so this request is for Station 21. As I mentioned in the outlined, this is in response to their sister restaurant, Lola, being closed for a time for some work that they are being done following the storm on the 4th. They're doing some work there. So this is to facilitate their staff being able to work, and another option for the community as well. As I mentioned, too, we're working with the state on an expedited process. They just asked that we advertise as we usually do for 2 weeks, as we've done, hold the hearing, and then should this be approved this evening, they will expedite it tomorrow, so they will be able to open tomorrow evening. So it's going right now. It's currently a seasonal license, which allows it to be open from April 1st to January 15th. This would exchange it to an annual license. Should they want to return to that, we can do that later in the year in that process.
Okay. Do you guys have comments?
For the record, Brian Swain. I'm here with Mark Daly. He's the manager of Station 21. I think Amy did a good job in classifying what's going on. It's just going from a seasonal license to an annual. No other change to it. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this matter? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing and we can make comments or go to a vote.
My only comment is I think it's applaud government for acting in the benefit of our citizens, and I appreciate that. I'll make a motion that we approve this.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. I'm assuming the same group is here for Lola Burger.
Correct. So this is a similar situation with Lola Burger. As many of you know, it is currently open, being that the common vic and the entertainment licenses are local and were renewed in December. We did allow them to open following health and building inspections, which they passed, and so they're all set with that. This will allow the liquor license to be active. And again, we're going through the same process, and it can be active tomorrow evening pending these approvals.
Okay, I opened the public hearing, so I'm opening the public hearing. If there are any comments from the public, hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. And
Make a motion that we approve the application.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks for
You guys
being
could just
open.
sign. Everybody sign and give it to Erica, please.
Town managers report.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Lauren, sorry. Lauren, our energy coordinator, is going to give an overview of what she's been up to lately.
Good evening to the board. Lauren Sinatra, Energy Coordinator. I did prepare an extensive memo. I'm just going to hit on some of the highlights tonight and entertain questions. Starting off with a few general announcements about energy-related matters. National Grid's basic service rates have increased in November substantially until the end of April to 12.67 cents a kilowatt hour, which is 30% more than last winter's rate. And a reminder that the Nantucket Power Choice aggregation rate is 9.13, and it has been extended through May and can help residents save up to 30% over National Grid's basic service rates. Many residents have contacted me over the last month alarmed by their January electric bills, most associated with the frigid temperatures we experienced over the holidays. And my suggestions have been to contact National Grid to look into budget billing, which removes the peaks and valleys and gives a more consistent and dependable bill. And also to make sure that you're on an electric supply rate that isn't more than basic service, for example, the town's aggregation plan. So for other questions, I welcome public to come and see me, find me. The final Republican tax bill that was passed in late December preserved critical 30% federal investment tax credits for wind and solar power systems and a $7,500 credit for electric vehicles. And that had reversed language in earlier versions. There was some concern in the industry whether those tax credits were going to remain, and they are. However, a new tariff just imposed by the Trump administration on solar imports will take effect next week. And it may increase the cost of solar installations on island by 5 to 10% in the near term. And a heads up that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts will be transitioning to a new solar incentive model by the summer, which is estimated to reduce annual savings by about 10%. So if anyone had been interested in investigating solar in the past, I would say to do it sooner than later. And it begs the question of whether if we see the industry slowing down on Nantucket because of these market challenges, if we increase the rebate of our solar rebate program. But we did award the first solar rebate in December to Carrie Hazel Grove for her 11 kW PV system. There's a few solar rebates in the queue, with other residents contacting me weekly. Still plenty of funding available. So to learn more about that, I encourage people to visit nantucket-ma.gov/solar rebate. A free inefficient refrigerator and freezer recycling pickup date will take place on Monday, March 19th. This is sponsored by National Grid. If you have an old fridge, you're looking to get rid of it, they will pay $50 and take it away for free. A couple updates on municipal facilities. We are continuing energy efficiency upgrades and audits at the Wannacomet Water. We helped secure a $3,400 LED lighting rebate. At the fire station, the current facility, we got very low-cost LED lights for the high bays and are looking at incentives for the new facility, as well as at the Surfside wastewater treatment plant. In late December, we procured a new municipal electric supply contract. On December 21st, we entered a 24-month contract with Spark Energy for 9.35 cents a kilowatt hour. Unfortunately, electric prices are rising and are forecasted to stay high for the next at least 2 years. So all that said, we feel we got a very favorable rate and secured additional savings by aggregating with towns such as Plymouth, Scituate, and Cohasset on that contract. So Erica, next slide. We're going to talk about a couple solar energy initiatives. Later, by mid-February, the town will know whether we received an award by the Mass DEP through their GAP 2 grant for $200,000 to install a 75 kilowatt solar PV system on the southerly facing roof of the Surfside wastewater plant's sludge processing building. The town would just be committed to pay 10%, and that would be paid off within a year. So we're very hopeful that we're going to receive this grant, and that should be announced by mid-February. Next slide, please. We're also investigating the Wires Valley land owned by the water company to see if that could be considered as a viable solar site. We identified 10.5 acres, which could host up to 2 megawatts of solar for the community. So we're so far investigating the permitting and trying to track down some details regarding the endangered species, but that is something we're actively pursuing. Next slide, please. From October through December, we were fortunate enough to host a few WPI students who helped us to investigate the solar PV generation on island. We were able to confirm the amount of solar actually installed on island and how much the island is generating in solar energy locally. We confirmed there are, at the end of 2017, 30 residential systems, 10 commercial systems, with half of those systems being installed in the last 2 years. And we see more and more applications coming across in the building department. And very positive feedback from the local solar rebate program as well. Next slide, please. One of the deliverables from that project was to build an interactive solar map of the island, which allows anyone on the website, this is on the town's website, to click on specific pinpoints of local solar installations. This is all based on public information. So Erica, next slide. You can zoom in. This is, for example, Jack Weinhold, one of our local energy leaders on island. You can see where systems are installed, see critical information about those systems, who installed them, the capacity when they were installed, how much they're producing, the general cost per watt, and also access a few local case studies. So this has been a really, I think, informative resource for the public, especially wanting to know who is installing solar on the island and where is solar on the island. Just because they don't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So the feedback from this tool has been very positive as well. Next slide, please. In terms of offshore wind developments, in late December, 3 wind developers submitted proposals for the Massachusetts solicitation for 400 megawatts of offshore wind capacity. Those companies were Deepwater Wind, Bay State Wind, and Vineyard Wind, who is the closest in vicinity to Nantucket. And we're still awaiting their photo simulations, by the way. All of the proposals contain an element of energy storage, with Vineyard Wind, the project proposing a community affordability and resiliency fund for impacted communities, including Nantucket. And a decision is anticipated by late April, so we're monitoring those developments. In the meantime, the Federal Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, BOEM, is preparing to auction 2 additional parcels, which are directly south of Nantucket, and you'll see them in green. And due to the efforts of the Energy Office, we're hopeful that there will be an incentive for developers who execute a community benefits agreement with an impacted community, such as what Vineyard Wind did with Vineyard Power. So as a result of that, the town has been approached by 4 different offshore wind developers who are interested in engaging the town and negotiating a community benefits agreement. So to better help the town assess the risks and benefits of such a potential arrangement, the town put together an advisory committee, which includes members of the Board of Selectmen, Finance Committee, in addition to the town's Director of Cultural Tourism, as well as myself. And in the last month, we've engaged with 2 developers who have come to Nantucket, and both remain very eager to hear what the town's proposal is for a community benefits agreement. So we will be presenting and preparing those recommendations for the town manager in the next several weeks.
For you.
Yes.
We talked about this a little bit, but how does it work? So we put it out in the negotiating process. Here's what we'd like to see. But if we ask for too much, does it blow up? It
comes down to negotiations, and we're trying to figure out how to do that at this very moment. There are 2 ways we foresee this being successful for Nantucket. 2 ideas that we've discussed with the developers, in which they've given us positive feedback, are one for the town to set up a community improvement or green community fund, in which annual or lump sum payments, depending on the size of the development, could be awarded to the town to fund resiliency or green energy projects such as solar, storage, microgridding, islanding technology, so forth. The other is to see if we can negotiate for a wholesale or discounted electric supply, or for them to assign credits to electric bills of those who participate in the Nantucket aggregation program. So there are 2 ways that we think we could achieve real benefit for the community. And it's up to us to brainstorm and come back to them with what we think would work, and then negotiate the details.
And I would just like to point out that before we can even negotiate, it's really thank you to Lauren to make sure that we've been identified as an impacted community. Most of these wind companies would consider wherever they're connecting as impacted communities as opposed to us. So it's really been thank you to Lauren to make sure that we're a part of the negotiations now rather than later. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so next slide, please. Actually, before I jump into Heat Smart, a couple updates regarding the island's energy storage initiatives. I've invited Joe Crespo and Chris Tomasini from ICE Energy just to explain a bit about the contract you approved today, about the ICE Energy to Fairgrounds demonstration, and just what the benefits are and what the technology is about, and next steps on that specific project. So, yes. This should just take a few minutes.
Thank you, Lauren. I'm Joe Crespo from GenBright. I was here a few months ago when we announced the award from the Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources relating to this grant money, which is going to be used to help reduce the peak demand on Nantucket during the summer hours, which will help ultimately defer the need for the investment in that third undersea cable. And so we're here to give an update on one of our first projects, which is going to be at the 2 Fairgrounds location, and involved a contract between GemBright and the town of Nantucket, which you approved earlier tonight. So if you can advance the slides, I'll walk through and give you a summary, and feel free to ask any questions. So just to recap, this is the first installation relating to a grant that was awarded. GemBright applied for the grant in partnership with ICE Energy and the Office of Energy and from Nantucket to procure or to receive about $1.5 million in funds to go towards the installation of these ice bear units. And these are air conditioning units that are equipped with ice makers. They make ice overnight during the off-peak hours. Then they melt ice during the day during the peak hours. And GemBright will actually monitor the conditions on Nantucket so that we can make sure that we're melting the ice, which will stop the compressor from running and use the ice to cool instead of the compressor during the peak hours each day in the summer. So that award was granted in 2017, and we've been undergoing some training and looking for some sites and working with local HVAC contractors to start deploying the ice bears on the town of Nantucket, mostly at residential sites, but this first one will be at 2 Fairgrounds. So the benefits to the town are obviously, if we can deploy these ice bears, they will, and GemBright can operate them, we will help reduce the peak demand on Nantucket, which will help, defer the need for that capital investment by National Grid. And what we're here to talk about today is the lease agreement for the first project, which is to install the first ice bear at 2 Fairgrounds. So you can go to the next slide. So this is the first project. We'll use this project not only to demonstrate, the ice bear and its capability, but also to train local HVAC contractors. We plan on using local HVAC contractors to do all the installations, as well as to do the maintenance on the ice bears. So this first project will be to replace the HVAC system that you see pictured there. It's an older unit. The ice bear will have a higher SEER rating. This unit could probably be described as end of life. So by GemBright providing the ice bear unit for free at no cost, including the installation, we're helping the town avoid a capital cost. In addition to that, there'll be some savings from the increase in energy efficiency. So that's the HVAC unit we're replacing as part of the contract. You can go to the next slide. We talked a little bit about the project benefits. The ice bear, the lease is for 3 years, but we can always extend if the town wishes to do that, because the life of the ice bear is for 20 years. By proactively replacing this HVAC unit, which is near the end of life, we'll avoid a capital outlay for the town of about $12,500, we estimate. There'll also be reduced maintenance costs associated with the new ice bear, because we will be contributing to the maintenance costs. For those of you that are familiar with the nomenclature around efficiency, this ice bear unit is a 14.5 SEER rating, which is a higher SEER rating than the existing unit. We also expect that there'll be additional benefits, not only for this project, but for the other projects that we install. Because of the cooling technology, it'll also result in less humidity in the locations where we install. And we should also mention that, and this may be more important for the residential projects than this project, but during those late afternoon and evening hours where we're melting the ice instead of running the compressor on the air conditioner, it's actually a lot less noisy, because all that noise comes from the compressor. So this will, also reduce noise pollution for the sites which may be a benefit to homeowners.
Is that a typo, or is there actually an EER rating?
I'm sorry, it should be a SEER rating.
That's all right.
The next one's actually one is seasonal, S is seasonal.
Okay. So the other one is just an EER.
Correct.
That's interesting. I've never seen that.
Yeah, and this is when the actual, referring to when the actual ice is melting and the compressor stops running. Basically that's a 95% reduction in the electricity consumption. That's why that number is so high. You won't see that rating on any commercially available air conditioners. And so, the most important thing about the two fairgrounds project is that it's a demonstration not only for residents, but also for the HVAC contractors, and that's why we're so excited about it. There's a couple more slides. Is that? So quick overview of the agreement. It's a 3-year term. GenBright is paying for the turnkey installation and also contributing to the maintenance. And we're using local HVAC contractors to do the installation and maintenance. And we'll also invite them for the the ones that are not installing to the installation so they can observe and learn more about how those installations work. I think that's about it. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, Two Fairgrounds really did serve as an ideal location for that, especially as a show and tell demonstration. So look forward to supporting that project. This is very exciting. On December 7th, Nantucket was selected for another $1.25 million ACES grant to fund the installation of 500 residential Tesla Powerwall batteries. These grants were awarded as part of the Baker administration's Advancing Commonwealth Energy Storage Program. So since then, I've actually been working closely with Tesla over the last year. And right now we're working on messaging, a launching website, and just seeing if we can get samples of the solar roof, because I know that the HTC is very interested in that product, which is a solar integrated roof. And I look forward to unveiling more about those program details in the springtime. The town also was selected for the Heat Smart Nantucket program. This program aims to offer the public discounted air source heat pumps and solar hot water systems. And we're in the process right now of evaluating installer applications and coming up with a marketing plan. But we look forward to presenting more information to the public soon. I can say, since we opened up expressions of interest to the public about this program, we have received over 300 replies. So we're excited for a successful program in the near future. In terms of the municipal aggregation, it's doing very well, again, achieving near 30% savings. We did seek to go out to bid a couple weeks ago to renew a contract or to get a new contract once the rate terminates in May, and we found that the markets just were not favorable, most likely due to the frigid climate, the bomb cyclone. So we are waiting until mid-March once we have a clear idea of what basic service will be, and then to seek bids that can either beat or match National Grid's basic service with energy savings as the primary goal of that aggregation. So we hope to have more information on the new rate by mid-March. So. Lastly, Mass Save has committed to 5 dates in 2018. They next returned to the island March 19th through 23rd. Last year, they were able to install nearly 27,000 LEDs, 300 programmable thermostats, 120 free dehumidifier replacements, which resulted in 408 kilowatts of peak load energy savings. So those help to further defer that third cable. We also continue to promote energy code and green job training for local contractors. On October 11th, in association with the Nantucket Builders Association, we hosted a workshop on the topic of high performance and net zero homes. And next week, on February 14th at 6 o'clock at the Fairgrounds Restaurant, we are hosting a workshop on the energy code. And that should be very well attended, open to the public. So with that, I entertain any questions from the board.
I just have one on the some of the changes for the savings in the Surfside wastewater treatment plant that look like some pretty significant savings per year, 42,000 or so. Mm-hmm. How difficult or easy or expensive are those changes? And do we have an idea of payback or?
Yeah, that's something I'm working with David Gray and staff on in consultation with his consultants on some of those energy efficiency measures. I understand that there are priorities that are consuming a lot of his attention nowadays, but we look forward to continuing those discussions. Yeah. Thank you.
You've been busy. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lauren. Next, we've got some budget reports. We're going to do, I think, if it's okay with the board, we'll combine a couple of these things and do first and second quarter of fiscal 18 with airport, and then fiscal 19 with airport, and then same with water.
So yes, if we can, we'll just go right into the second quarter because it's cumulative. In the second quarter, the airport revenues were up about $330,000 over last year, but the expenses were increased by about $525,000. Some of that was anticipated, or much of that. The majority of the increase in the expense was due to fuel. And on the revenue side, we have a number of things. We had last year we had a one-time settlement with PFC. So the net, we're not doing as well as last year, a couple $100,000 behind. But I can tell you, January and February numbers for fuel are up about 20%. So we're moving in the right direction. And our debt is up due to a timing issue. We had a double payment in November. Also on our expenses, part of the increase was a timing issue with regard to the repayment to the town of about $76,000. Any questions on the quarterly report? On our budget, we continue to balance the utilization of our funds. We have various funds. As you know, we have a fuel revolver, we have our retained earnings, we have our PFC. And so what we're doing is we're showing a reliance of about $429,000 on the PFC. It's going to be $400,000 on the fuel revolver and PFC to balance out the budget. So the fuel revolver was initially created to protect us or insulate us from any significant swing in the price of fuel. Right now, we have about $1.7 million in that account, and projected by the end of the year to have $1.2 million. The estimates have been about $500,000 is enough insulation, so we're using some of that to balance off our operating. The other things, though, that we're doing are we're continuing to expand our non-aeronautical. We put out bunker road lots. We had 2 proposals. We had to reject one. We're awarding one hopefully next week. And subsequently, we had 3 other parties express interest, so we're going to be reissuing those requests. Another note, though, is in our budget, the revenues are very conservative because we cannot, according to DOR regulations, account for certain things even though we know they're coming. For example, we have a lease that we're finalizing that's going to be at least another $150,000. We have known changes in air service. This summer, we're going to be extremely busy. JetBlue's adding 2 flights a day. American's adding Charlotte. United's expanding their season up into jets. A new carrier wants to come in and fly a jet to White Plains. So none of that is put in here because we can't, according to the regulations, put it in until we recognize the actual revenue. So it's a very conservative budget, but it also, again, is just managing how we're utilizing our funds. Our debt service, we're trying to get some better control on that. And in fact, we're seriously considering taking a year off from all capital projects in the subsequent year. So again, you can see at the end of last fiscal year, our retained earnings were $1.9 million. We backed out the 428, so we're down to about 1.4, and then the fuel revolver at the end of 18 budget is about $1.6 million, and for the 19, it'll be about another $1.2 million in that. Any questions?
How's the RFP going on the restaurant?
It's out. We held our pre-bid conference today, or pre-proposal conference today. We had a walkthrough. We've completed the repairs to the floor. We are executing a contract for the vestibule installation. We're going to be enclosing that. Number of people have picked up. We have a number of questions, so the process is moving along, and I apologize. Off the top of my head, I don't have the exact dates in mind, but the goal is to have an operator in there by April 1.
Good. Anybody have?
Thank you.
Just one comment. You don't come back with a comment is that medical insurance increases are now exceeding raises that we give to staff.
Is your mic not working, Jim?
I'm going to ask everyone to speak really clearly into their mic because we've gotten a couple complaints that people can't hear the board speaking. Thanks.
Yep, so water.
Good evening, Mark Willett, Wanacommet Water. So, can you hear me? Okay. So for our first and second quarters of 18, it's kind of what we expected. Water revenues for sales was down about 7%. There's three reasons for that. Two of them we expected. One, the weather is what it is. September, if you remember, was a pretty rainy month, and it kind of cut the season short. The other two reasons for the drop in revenue from sales is obviously the capital improvements we've been doing to the system, the new meters that learn your patterns and detect and let us know when there's a leak, so we're stopping leaks sooner, and also the great help with the community, the Landscape Association, and also the irrigation installation companies putting in high-tech rain sensors. It's all all working towards reducing, which is a good thing, that we're reducing what we sell. We're trying to conserve what we can. As far as the first two quarters of installing new service connections, they were up about 7%. They did slow down in December. There was kind of a halt on issuing road opening permits until a way to better patch and repair the temporary patch and repair the roads until Victor's plant could be open. That's now been figured out and worked out, so they're starting to move on those. So even though we're down the first two quarters of this year in revenues, as far as sales go, I think we're going to make that up with water connections. We're right on pace on about what we thought, 125 to 130 projected new services, and we're right about there at the halfway point. So we should be okay that way. So everything kind of went as expected for the first two quarters. Going into the 19 budget, the 19 budget is actually about 150,000 less than the 18 budget. Some big changes that are coming forward this year is the Water Management Act, our 20-year water withdrawal permit, which kind of dictates what we can pump on a daily and yearly basis from each source, each well. The state is currently working on that. They have been. We were hoping to have it back by now, but there's been some changes with the Cape and Islands dealing with seasonal populations and what the rates do for 3 or 4 months out of the year. So they're still working on that. But when that comes out, we'll have a better idea on what our projected sales would be going forward into like 2020. Some other changes, there was increases in a few line items on our budget. One was for professional services. That was because we want to continue our research into the groundwater investigation under Nantucket to better define what we have. We're experiencing, as you all are aware, some subdivisions and some growth that we're really not used to. We've done a lot of work in modeling the groundwater underneath our pump stations and in the immediate zone 2 for Wanacommet. But our goal is to extend out past that. Last summer and fall, we went out into Nantucket and did a bunch of geophysics works out there. So we want to extend that and try to build an island-wide, since it is a sole source aquifer and one island, one aquifer, we want to do the whole island if we can. So that'll continue. We did add 2 new employees in January to compensate for a lot of the overtime and a lot of the hours that the guys had to put in to keep up with the work demand. 2 local guys, they're working out great. Young guys that plan on being here hopefully for a long time. Even by adding the 2 people, the payroll and the salary budget line only went up 0.8%, not even a full percent, just by the way we've moved people around in the organization. So things are going well in that regard. And really, we're just hoping for nice weather in the summer to help us get through.
Yeah, back
Yeah.
to so the idea of going to Nantucket is you'd say you'd pump from a few different places. Is there an advantage to draw from different areas from the aquifer? Is that
There is, and what the model is starting to show us now that we actually have some data for Nantucket, there's actually some saltwater intrusion happening in Nantucket. I know everybody knew that already. We don't have it here, mid-island and around our zone 2, but there might be ways, obviously we're pumping from mid-island out to Nantucket, but there might be ways to do a smaller system out there or a pump out there to better control that. Because once it starts coming in, as they found out on the Cape, it comes in further every year, and it recedes slower back at the end of every season.
Does it make a difference how deep you're going?
It does.
What part of the aquifer
It makes a big
you're
difference.
tapping?
You're exactly right, Matt. The 3 layers of the aquifer, you have the upper, the middle, where Wannacomet pumps from the middle, which is like 150 feet,
Right.
and then the lower, which we've drilled into to find fresh water, but nobody's pumping from that. Most of the people in Nantucket and the private wells are all pumping in that upper top 60, 70 feet,
Right.
and that's what's pulling it in.
How low is the lower layer?
The lower layer starts at about 300 feet below us,
Wow.
and there's about a 100-foot clay layer between where we pump and that lower level. So it's a glacial lake deposit, Glacial Lake Nantucket. So if we tap into that lower one, there is no recharge in the lower one. If you tap into that lower one, we're now mining that groundwater. So the mapping and the geophysics will give us an idea of how much that lower level holds.
Mike, do you anticipate any change in the amount based on the 20-year water permit? Do you anticipate any changes?
So about 3 or 4 months ago, I went over and met with DEP. There was myself, someone from the Vineyard, and a few towns on the Cape. And they're agreeing to increase our seasonal pumpage for maybe a 4-month span from maybe 5 or 10% increase of our permit to try to cover that. Because really, it's a 4-month period where the pumps don't shut off. We're full bore.
And
You
is
know,
that is that an amount that covers sort of the existing demand, or is that allowing then some contingency for
that
future
would
growth?
allow us for the peak season to pump 5%, maybe 5 to 10% more than our permit, which would take care of the demand. Now, all of this was done and the permit is being drawn up and finalized before all these subdivisions took place. So I've been in contact with them. Just there's, I think, 16 subdivision plans at our office. All want to tie into Wannacomet. 5 of the bigger ones, are over 459 units. So that's a lot of water, and that's something that needs to be factored into our 20-year permit. You know, it might be something where we need that 10% year round.
When you're saying you have 125, 130 new services,
That's what we
Is that a
projected.
new dwelling, or is that secondary dwellings, or what's the?
What's happening is the subdivisions are a lot easier to maintain and try to predict a year or two out. But like, you know, take example, a house on the corner of Hooper Farm that for 45 years was one service. It's now 3 with the opportunity to have 3 more on the same lot than the lot next to it. So we're getting a lot of those, a lot of cottages, a lot of second dwellings,
Right.
and people just trying to maximize their investment on the island. And, you know, there is a magic number out there with just what the system can do. Even if we increase our water withdrawal permits, with the mechanics of the system, the tank, the pipe, the pumps, there's a magic number that we can serve, and that's it.
How do you determine that? How do we determine that as a town?
We're working on that now. We're at about 80% capacity. I mean, there's room for us to go, but by throwing in 260 and 157 and 62, and we're going to get to that upper threshold really fast. And I just, you know, I don't want that. We want to stay in front of that,
Right.
to upgrade the system and to upgrade the permits so we can handle it. We don't want to be the one to stop people from accessing water.
Is it just an issue of equipment and sizing, or is there an issue of water?
The quantity of water is good based on the modeling. There's a lot of water in that middle aquifer that does get recharge. It's the mechanics of getting it out. The quality and the quantity is great. It's So when we go to our capital project, which because of everything that's going on this winter, we've postponed our winter capital projects. So for the capital we have scheduled for 19, we're probably not going to seek that capital funding, and we'll do what we were going to do this winter, next winter, if everything is back to normal and okay. We just thought that was enough stress on the town and Erica doing alternate truck routes and bus schedules that we'll kind of postpone that. And at our meeting tomorrow with the commission, we're going to talk more about using retained earnings on some of this capital project, on these capital projects. But the quality, again, and the quantity of water is there. So when we do start to change pipe, instead of going from 6 to 10 or 6 to 8, we might start talking about 12-inch or 16, 24-inch pipe.
Right.
Right now, the system will hold 5 million gallons between tanks and pipe. And our pumps just don't stop.
Right.
Does it make any sense to try to incentivize people who are on town water to put in private wells for their irrigation? Would that make a big impact?
You can do that, but at least if we're in charge of it, we can control it. So if we start to realize and model something and see that there is a drastic wrong effect of that, we can control the pumping. If you're on a private well and you want to irrigate 7 hours a day, there's no way to stop that. I'm not saying people shouldn't go out and do that if they want to, if they want a private well for irrigation, that's fine. But at least if it's under us, we can kind of keep an eye on it.
And there is, I think it's pretty significant numbers. The 30 to 35% of what we're pumping in the summer is irrigation. So it really
Yes, it is.
It's a significant number.
It is, and we're working on ways to, that's all well and good, and that's a good revenue source, and it keeps the economy going with the landscapers. But as we start reaching that upper level of those permits, that's the first thing to go, is irrigation. I know that's a negative economic effect on the island. It's landscaping, people that want the nice landscaping, the lawns, the plants. So we want to try to do what we can do to make that not happen.
And I'd just like to make a plug for there's alternatives to water-thirsty plants. So
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be all bad.
And I'll say the Landscape Association has been great. It's simple phone calls, quick conversations, and they react. Same with the irrigation guys. One phone call to say, hey, we need to go on every other day watering, or, north side of the island you do Tuesdays, and south side you do Wednesdays, and it's done. It's done that day.
Great. Okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sconset? No? Oh, yeah, you get to do Sconset now.
I always forget about Sconset. So Sconset followed a similar path in the first 2 quarters. Again, the revenues for water sales are down a little bit, but that is what we were expecting and what we were hoping. There is a subdivision that's kind of in the works out there. I don't know where it sits as far as purchase and sale and all of that. There's a potential for 30-plus new customers in Sconset. We're really treating Sconset as a pump station, as part of the system. So the budgetary, it's really not going to change. We are working on doing something on Baxter Road. The original plan was to replace that water main, but not knowing exactly what's going to happen to Baxter Road and where all the utilities are going to go when it comes that time to move them, we didn't want to spend the $3 million to replace the whole water main. So we've just opened a bid last week for cleaning and lining that water main to extend its life. We can probably get another 10 or 12 years out of that pipe if we do that. And that came in at about $1.3 million. We're working with Brian and the finance team to determine what the debt service would be on that and what that would mean. We don't want a rate increase in Sconset or at Wannacomet, by the way. We're kind of ahead of the curve a little bit in Sconset with all the work that was done in the last few years with the tank and the pump station. We are doing all new meters in Sconset. Right now, they don't have the same capability that we have to get the red flag when the meter's out of normal use. So that started actually today, changing out meters in Sconset. So eventually here by spring, we should have all the same capability for meter reading potential in Wisconsin that we have in town. And the only capital in Wisconsin is repairing and maintaining the coating on the tank.
Good.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. Last item under town manager's report is the monthly town management activity report. I won't go through every single item here, but just to give you an overview of some of the items that we've been working on. We've got ongoing union negotiations for contracts that expire June 30th, 2017. And a little bit has changed since I put this in your packet. The DPW agreement has been ratified by the union. It's pending board review and approval. I believe you have executive session tomorrow about this. And there's a couple of other outstanding contracts. Pleased to let you know that the Island Home Administrator search, instead of continuing, is now hopefully complete. And we have hired an individual to fill this position. He will start at the end of the month. And I'm not sure if a press release got out or not, but it's pending. And a couple of other paperwork things are pending with him. But we're glad to have that underway. Search for the deputy DPW director is continuing. We are also in the middle of a search for a chief technology officer. We've established a project manager position. This is more for strategic types of projects, and that is in the process of being filled. Number of different meetings happening. FinCom is meeting right now regarding the fiscal 19 budget and the annual town meeting warrant for 2018. We are continuing to work on a scope of work for the Nantucket Water Quality Improvement Study, and that is maybe narrowing down more to some modeling that will tell us, give us some good information, we think. So that's underway. Some of us attended the Mass Municipal Association Annual Conference earlier in January, and we've had a number of meetings regarding the Surfside Crossing 40B proposal. Number of different projects. These are just some of the major ones we've been most recently involved in. Obviously, the January 4th sewer force main failure has taken the time of a lot of individuals. The Six Fairgrounds Tacoma Green housing project is a lot of time and effort as well. Our Island Home is just ongoing different things, some real estate items, sewer projects, the cable TV license renewal. Harbor Place is starting to really get underway with a board work group, or rather town manager work group with some board members and others on it. Fire station project, as we can see next door, has started. We're working on a coastal resiliency plan. We had a call about that plan yesterday, and we're going to be planning some public informational sessions later in April and probably did we say April? We did, right? April, end of April, and sometime in July. And a survey will go out with that as well. We've also started work on a sewer rate study and just some various other items that are underway. The board is, as you know, working on strategic planning, and we have 3 upcoming workshops scheduled. I do have on my to-do list to get going a work group to start looking at the landfill contract, which expires in 2025, but we're going to start getting at that sooner rather than later. And there was a board vote at the end of November regarding parking, and I talked to some of you about that today. We've had a staff meeting this week about it, and we're continuing to work towards the board's vote to look at managed parking in the downtown area and possibly elsewhere through some type of a system that we're going to probably engage a consultant to help us identify and work through. That's it.
Selectmen's reports and comments. We are tonight reviewing a letter from the Board of Selectmen to Mass Housing in regard to the Surfside Crossing proposal. We have until the 15th to submit this letter. And I mean, this is generally a board discussion. We do have a draft. I know that there are a number of concerned citizens here. We've received numerous letters, which we've read through. We definitely tried to incorporate comments that came from all of you into our letter. And I will take brief public comments. This is not a public hearing. If people could be non-repetitive and keep their individual comments to a minute, that would be really appreciated, and really try to focus on anything that you think we might be missing from the comments that we've already drafted.
Dawn, how do you want us to do this?
Just come up, but keep it limited.
For once, I'm not representing any board that I'm sitting on. I'm just representing myself as a 35-year resident of the Badlands. It's on my license plate. Everybody knows I'm very happy to live in the Badlands. I'm well familiar with 40Bs. I was the ZBA administrator for 25 years. I dealt with all of the 40Bs, and I dealt with statements because I'm a member of the Housing Authority. And I'm also a member of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, so I do support affordable housing when done appropriately. We have a great example of a 40B done well with Sachems, and we have other 40Bs not so well. There are no places for kids to play, not enough parking, which is pretty much what's happening with this one as well. When you have 156 units, where's the overflow parking? It's ridiculous to assume that people are going to have one car or two cars and then not have any visitors. So there's some programmatic issues with 156 units, regardless of 13 acres or not. I'm not being represented by an attorney, and I have recused from sitting on this at the planning board when it comes before the planning board on a formal application for review and recommendations to the ZBA. I'm representing myself. I wanted to be part of a year-round community in a rural setting, and that's what we were. My realtor even tried to talk me out of buying back there because we could only access it at the time by Sewer Beds Road, a dirt road with trees and poison ivy and everything else. It is a distinct neighborhood. It has probably 200 houses back there. I can't tell you how many people back there because a lot of us have secondary dwellings. It is the largest year-round community on Nantucket that has one access. It could very well be the largest year-round community, period. Most of us are hardworking, long-standing citizens of Nantucket, and we pay taxes and we contribute, and everything we own is invested in our homes and in that neighborhood, and we're all very happy to be there. It is also distinct that the lots are large. Back in 1972, when zoning was enacted, nobody wanted to live out there. It was pucka bushes and the sewer beds. That's about it. And Augie Ramos had his junkyard and his tennis courts with gravel on them. It has remained rural in character, despite Abrams Quarry, which is a 40B, despite Sherburne Commons, which is a great neighbor for me. They don't stay up late and party, that's for sure. And we already have 3 other 40Bs. The Housing Authority has 2 40Bs. Both sections. Sachems is a 40B and Abrams Quarry is a 40B, and this would be a 5th 40B. Now, I understand there's a lot of NIMBY involved with 40Bs around the state. This is not a NIMBY. We already have 4 in the same neighborhood with one access. There is another way to get out. Obviously, when Sachems was done, they made them come in and out on Surfside Road to avoid coming out onto our road. There are 3 entrances onto South Shore Road in this plan, which is going very close to the intersection, as opposed to spreading out the traffic because it's about 1.5 miles long down to the sewer beds, straight shot. You hear people drag racing at night. This is right at that intersection. Now, a long time ago, before we put the second stop sign in there, that intersection had been ruled that it had failed. You couldn't get out of the Badlands. You couldn't get out of Surfside Fairgrounds. It had failed.
You're way over a minute.
Okay. I didn't write a letter. So that's why I'm just getting into this. The Surfside, I'm going to finish with the Surfside area plan, which I was on, which was accepted by the town, by the Planning Commission, distinctly talked about affordable housing. Most of Housing Nantucket's units are in Surfside South. The 40Bs are in Surfside West, which is us. And we have taken the hit for the entire island. It's time for the rest of the community to take responsibility for 40Bs. They shouldn't all be stuck in one neighborhood that isn't full of a lot of wealthy people that can't really fight back. So I think you need to be very careful. There's MIPA issues, there's archaeological stuff that hasn't been done yet, there's traffic studies that haven't been done, and doing it in the middle of the winter is kind of stupid.
I believe all of those comments are in our letter.
Okay, but the impact on the intersection, the impact on ours, the light scatter, the noise issues, I think it's not done correctly. We all know it's going to be developed, but this is insanity at 156 units, and the ZBA is probably going to knock that down like they have every other 40B that's ever come in. But I think we need to be, if you're going to send a letter and you're going to turn it into an unfriendly 40B as opposed to a friendly, the letter needs to be more strongly worded. It is not worded strongly enough. And I'll have more to say eventually. Thank you.
Sean, you're next.
Hello, everybody. Sean Cabral, 8 South Shore Road, lifelong resident of South Shore Road. A few things I'd like to say is that this 40B is really going to impact more than anyone can really know. And to receive a letter like this from the town for the state is really inadequate. First of all, if you just look at the first page, the only word italicized in bold is "and build." That's the only word you have italicized and in bold letters is "and build." Like, the Nantucket unquestionably has a critical need to design, permit, and build. That sets the tone right there to this letter that you guys are in favor of 40Bs and building. This letter is just incomplete, and it is not going to work. If you want to represent us, this is not how you're going to do it. We would like something a little stronger words, and I hate to, you said not to be repetitive, like Miss Williams, but this needs some little stronger wording. And we're also getting responses back from selectmen. While politically it would be easiest to stand up and strongly oppose the project, practically to get the most concessions, I sense we may want to oppose specific aspects of it. You know what? We're ruining the neighborhood. If we're going to ruin the neighborhood, we're going to ruin the neighborhood, or we're going to fight to not ruin the neighborhood. It's one of those two things. We're not going to, it's only like ruin 98%, not 100%. I mean, that's just the way it is. Miss Williams said, this is the largest year-round population of year-round residents on Nantucket Island is living on the street. And how do you treat them with this letter? I just think it's absolutely ridiculous. We need to have some strong language. We need to have a new conversation about this, because I think this is absolutely a joke. I'm really sorry, but that's just how I feel, and I think that's how a lot of the people on the street feel as well. And another thing that's not included in this is Miss Higgins is an environmental scientist, so she should tell you that there may be some environmental concerns with clear cutting, just about 13 acres right near a pond, watershed issues. There's some other concerns that could be in here. If you read other letters that were sent to mass housing from towns, Medfield, why don't you go take a look at Medfield's letter that they wrote to mass housing? Medfield had one that was recently, a 40B, that was recently denied, and their wording was much different. They had letters from the water inspector, the sewage inspector, from the police chief, from the fire chief, all stating their concerns. This has nothing in it whatsoever. As far as I'm concerned, this is inadequate and incomplete, and I really, really expected a lot more. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Cormac Collier, I went to Nantucket Land Council. We look at you to represent us and to be our partners in terms of addressing a development which really bypasses the will of the local people, which was stated 3 or 4 times at town meeting now, that they want that area as 2-acre zoning. We obviously have you in a certain situation that I imagine you're not very comfortable with in terms of having to respond to the mass housing on the PE letter. But what we are really looking for you to do is to take as strong as of a stance as you did with DJ McKinnon's 2-acre 40B on Surfside Road. I was part of that whole process, and right from the get-go, the Board of Selectmen went to every department and said, get us the toughest comments you could provide us. And those were all collated into the letter. I'm not part of this process in terms of, getting those comments, but I'm hoping that you've done the same thing and that you are directing your departments and your personnel, that you're not working with the developer, that you are opposed to the project as presented, and that we will hopefully get to an area that we can work towards a sensible solution. But right now, in no way is the Selectmen, in regards to the project, in support of it or even complacent with it. In regards to the letter itself, I would definitely recommend highlighting the concerns as it relates to sewer capacity and really hammering those homes, particularly as it relates to some of the recent issues and our ability to actually get our sewage to the wastewater treatment plant. And then also in particular, the comments that Mr. Willett has stated regarding our water capacity. Those are really important comments. I have two more. One is the endangered species issues, which I know the applicants, we should name them and not say applicants. They're Jamie Feely and Josh Posner, who are residents of Nantucket. They are aware of the endangered species issues, but I'm a little confused how the state could issue a project eligibility letter without even knowing how the proposed development is going to impact those endangered species. I don't think I've seen that before. I've spoken with Jesse Leddick, who is the Mass Heritage representative up at the state, who has stated they've had no conversations whatsoever with the developers. I know the old owners actually did some surveys and have found significant, at least I was told that there was significant endangered species on the site. So I think it's definitely an issue. The abutting site, in terms of what they had to do, Satcham's Path, when they did find endangered species, they actually had to place 1 acre of their property into a conservation restriction, and then they also had to place up towards it was 12 acres of the Housing Authority property in Tom Nevers into conservation. That's quite a huge thing and quite a huge endeavor to do. So it's actually in their best interest to probably get this going now, but it's certainly in our best interest in terms of the town and its desire to protect its open space and protect rare and endangered species to make that known to the state. Finally, which isn't necessarily noted, and again, I understand the process. I don't know if the state mass housing subsidizing agency is going to care that this project is entirely in the Myacomet Pond watershed, but it is. And the thousands and thousands of dollars that the town and nonprofits and other individuals have spent on Myacomet Pond recently to investigate nutrients and phosphorus and nitrogen overloading and to try and improve its health, it's kind of inconsistent with looking at this development, which is going to undoubtedly have impacts on that pond. The groundwater direction goes right into that pond. That should be noted in the letter as well. Finally, I'd like to end, it's not related directly to the letter, but it is related to the last 40B that was in front of you. You directed town council to attend all ZBA meetings and be in opposition to the 40B at the ZBA hearings and represent the town and the selectmen and the town's interest in terms of this not being consistent with our local zoning or planning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is James Cabral. I have a couple concerns, and that is, I've gone to leave my driveway in the morning at 8:30, and I've been stuck in from my driveway, I think most of you know where it is, to Surfside Road. There's about 13, 14 cars. You do not need another 300 cars at least on that road. Also, there are 5 deep water wells that are adjacent to the property line of that 40B. It's not the 40Bs we're opposed to. It's the size of the project. It's crazy. So we busted our butts. My wife and I, we were in our 20s when we bought that property. Linda was too. We busted our butts to buy it because it was 2-acre zoning. Now across the street, they want 3,000 square feet zoning. That's just not right. And duplexes. Who thought up duplexes on Nantucket? You know, I think Matt's smiling. I think we'd all be happy if they bulldozed Tristram's. That's all I have to say. Thank you. There's other things, but you asked not to bring them up at this point, so I won't. Thank you.
Thank you. Arthur?
Thank you. I represent the developer of this project, Surfside Crossing LLP. LLC, and am proud to be doing so. We think that this is an important project that will contribute substantially to the needs for affordable housing and middle-income housing in Nantucket, with a mix of housing, especially for the year-round residents. 72 of the units in the project are targeted for year-round residents, in addition to another 39 units that would be added toward the island's affordable housing requirements as qualifying with the state. That's 111 out of 156 units that would be for affordable and year-round residents. We do take exception to a number of points in the letter, but the issues that you've raised with regard to water, sewer, on down the line, are all things that can be handled before the Board of Appeals. It's their responsibility to act on the application for comprehensive permit and to consider all of those matters together with the very substantial input that we expect will be coming in from the community at large, and we intend to be engaging with the community at large with regard to all of these issues while we're going through the process. And in fact, we're already in touch with a number of the town departments that will be involved. This is the beginning of a long process, but we think that we're providing a very important service for the community and look forward to going forward with the ZBA application and process. Thank you.
Yeah, hi, my name is Chuck Davis. I live on South Shore Road also, and I've only got one thing to say because I ditto everything everyone else has said. I'm not going to waste your time. However, I do want to see a transparent, shall I say, letter as to how many units are on Nantucket right now in the affordable housing and how many permits have been issued. And what percentage are we at with those permits that have been issued? Not what's coming down the road, but what's already been issued. Because it's my understanding that we're already at 10% or better. Thank you.
We'll get an answer to that. Tucker
Yeah.
can answer that.
Yeah, Tucker can explain why we're not there.
Tucker Holland, housing specialist. To address the recent question, we're presently at 121 units on the list toward the 10% requirement of 490 units. There have been permits issued. We have 18 units that we can add effectively at any point at this time. There have been permits issued for the Richmond project that at the time they are eligible would add 242 units to the total. And with the Six Fairgrounds project, which is under appeal, that would add 64 units as well. So that would bring the total of where all of those things, if they came to fruition, to 445 toward the 490 requirement. So theoretically, 39 of this project would bring us within 6 of the 490. As
Theoretically, we could go down and knock this project down.
yeah, I'm just saying those are the known numbers. Could
But
I
those
just
units unfortunately don't count because they're both in appeal right now.
neither of those larger projects are on the list at this moment in time. That's correct. If can I just add a couple of comments? I mean, as the board knows, Madam Chair, I mean, this really, they need to make a determination on which lane they want to take with regard to the comment letter to the state. And so a couple of things. One, I just want to make clear, maybe for some of the folks in the room and as well as not in the room, that a number of the comments that we have heard from the neighbors tonight, the board may well be aware that there has been a revised version to what was in the Board of Selectmen package, and a number of those areas with regard to the Myakomet watershed, with regard to
Lot
further-
size, density, you talked about.
I'm sorry?
You added lot size and density comment.
lot size, density comparisons, specifically with Sachem's next door and so forth. So I just want to mention that a number of the things that we've heard in the room tonight have been added in terms of data points to the letter. The town council was obviously a specialist in their office in this area who knows the 40B process very well. We, with 106 Surfside, there was vociferous opposition expressed across the community to that project. And there were circumstances in that case that were even that lent themselves to even, to vociferous opposition, and still the state agency granted the Pell letter. And so there are, different approaches that we can have here. And so we've taken the approach in the opening of the letter, letting Mass Housing know that we do indeed as a community really care about this workforce housing issue. And we point out many of the things that we've been doing in recent years in that regard. And we, do have some concerns about this project. So that's kind of the tone that the letter has currently. And I just wanted to give a little bit of background on that.
But that's what's up for conversation.
Yes,
with this
exactly.
board. This
Yes.
isn't. That's up for us to decide the tone. It's up to us to decide whether. To me, as I read the letter, whether it's beefed up or not, we could still send in a letter of, non-recommendation, opposition, with the same set of circumstances that we said, as opposed to some lesser letter. So I just would, under with your, I'd like to know how many people in this room, if we could, by raising their hand, are here to talk about this subject.
Everybody.
Okay, thank you.
James Cabral again. Just to answer to respond to Mr. Reed's about the year-round housing in that development. Right now, in his other 40B, there's one. There's one year-round housing, full-price housing in that development. Now, that development is, I think, 40 houses. It's taken them 10 years. So if this was going to be 150 development, they're going to turn the road upside down for 30 years? Thank you.
Can we get the revised version of? No. Do we have any copies of it? This is the
But
revised
it's not
version.
red line. Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't get a chance to look at that.
I can't pull it up in my email for some reason.
It came in
My
at
town
4:30,
email won't
so
open.
I haven't. I know it's not anybody's fault, but I haven't really had a chance to look at the new draft.
Yeah.
We're not
As
going to
far
vote
as-
on this tonight.
Okay.
As far as
Or
I'm
is the
concerned, that's not
intention.
even on the table.
We'll be,
Right.
we have until
It is,
next.
I read it quickly earlier. It is strengthened from the original letter. I think there's a couple things we could do to strengthen the beginning.
I
Yeah.
unfortunately can't open it right
Yeah.
now. Is anybody else's town email down?
No.
Because
Mine's
I read it quickly before I came, but I can't get it in front of me.
Good evening,
Yes.
Sean Perry, 14 South Shore Road. I'd just like to read one excerpt from the Mass General Law, Chapter 40B, Section 2A. No state agency shall place a town, city, individual, or severally within a region or district grouping without the consent of the governing body of such town or city. The governing body in a town shall be the town meeting, and then a city, the city council. So right there, it states in the Mass General Law, Chapter 40B, that you guys have the ability to oppose this and fight this before it gets to the stage with this letter. I'd ask that you strengthen the letter. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak tonight?
Hi, I'm Diane Cabral, and I didn't plan on speaking.
My concern is safety. We've moved there 35 years ago. Great neighborhood. Times change. We welcomed Abrams Quarry. Great neighborhood. We welcomed Sherburne Commons. Terrific. We have a woman who's over 100 years old who walks twice a day in the neighborhood. Terrific. Sachem's Path. I went to the drawing for Sachem Path for the lottery. So moved with these families that got housing. It was so exciting. I wept for them. It was great. But we have one means of egress. And I work at the hospital. Yesterday, I had a patient call to say, I'm going to be late. I'm on Surfside Road, and there's been a car accident, and the road is blocked. Okay, if that happens on South Shore Road, you don't have any other way to get out. And if there were a fire, or it's just not safe. And, you know, we welcome everybody, but 156 units, access, one way out, not safe. So I really appreciate all of your work on it, and I hope that you'll take that into account. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Verna Gonzalez, and I live at 19 Wapaset Circle. Okay. Hi, I'm Verna Gonzalez. I live at 19 Wapaset Circle, and I am a recipient of a house at Sachem's Path, which I'm really thankful for. And so I'm right at the abutment. So right behind me is the site that's proposed, and just my experience as a new homeowner, our properties are 37 in total, and each property has a car spot for 2 persons per bedroom, which is great. I did notice while I'm there that there are a lot of visitors. There's only a limited amount of visitor parking. I think you can fit like 2 or 3 cars, and I see on weekends already people invite people over, there'll be 5 extra cars, and it's really hard to get by. And this is a site that was really thoughtfully planned. And at 37 homes, realizing that there are already parking problems that we got to face, it's alarming to see and understand the impact that this development would have. So my question or my concern at this point is parking waivers. I'm not sure if there are any that were asked from the developers, and if there are, how many parking spots are actually going to be advocated for these bedrooms, these property owners, especially if there's 2 to unit at least. And if it's that alone, if it can be appealed just on parking waivers, I don't think there should be any. I know there's a lot afforded, but I'm at Sachem's, and I'm realizing that we all got to be really mindful between that and water. I don't even want my lawn. I want something that's really sustainable there. And so that's my concern, the least impact that I have on that community and on everybody around Old South Road. So if that's helpful, that's great. And thanks for your work. Thank you.
I think we're not going to make a final decision tonight because we have a new draft. But does the board want to make any comments?
I'll make a couple of comments if I could. I think, first off, I think it was Sean said there was a couple words that were highlighted. About 4 words later, it says only. And I think that's sort of saying we only have this many. We're almost making their, I think the letter should turn around and say, I think we should highlight the positive stuff that we are doing. Instead of saying we only have this, but we're trying to do better, I think we should just try to highlight the positive that we are doing to the state and not make a case for them. I do think people have to realize, another one, I don't think that the apartment buildings are appropriate myself for that area. I think I'd rather see cottages there. I'd like to see less density. I'd like to see more tiers of affordability. And I think there could be a better design in that area. And so those are the kind of the key things. I did respond, and Sean quoted me earlier. I did respond because I think people have to be realistic and realize something is going to likely happen there. And so the question is, what's the and we can oppose this, and we'll oppose it strongly, I'm sure. But the question is, I think we should be saying what we do want and what is acceptable there, and in some manner, and still taking care of the aesthetics and the ecological and the safety, still addressing all those issues. And I think we should be working with the developers to get, at some manner, to get the best results, so that there's something. I think there should be more affordability than 25%, and maybe different tiers. So I do think there's an ability to do that. Once it gets to Boston, all bets are off. So I think that we have to find a way to deal with it ourselves, and that's sort of why I sent the letter. I think people have to realize something's going to happen, and if we spend a lot, in my opinion, spend all our money and all our time fighting, then we may end up with something overturned by a court that's completely terrible. And so that was, that's the reason that I wrote what I wrote. So that's it for now.
I'd like to sort of echo some of the comments you made about, what I don't want to see happen is any perception of road blocking projects, affordable housing projects, or sort of road blocking the opportunity to make this a better project if we accept that there will be something there, whether it's 2 acres or whatever it is. But I do feel that the plan that was put in front of us was incredibly aggressive. And I think that regardless of who builds it or why or how, even if this was 100% affordable housing, this is incredibly aggressive plan. And I think that our letter should reflect that, not because we don't want to work towards something better, but because this is really aggressive. And it's totally inappropriate in scale and scope for this area. And I think it really does have an impact, negative impact on the neighbors, the local community there. But to Matt's point as well, and I'm not sure, Tucker, if this is something we can include, I really do think that we need to start to comment on the 25-75 breakdown for 40Bs and their impacts on seasonal communities. I think that without there being some way to ensure that there is more affordable within that mix, I really do think these 40B projects are potentially having negative impacts on us. And this is something that has come up in discussions with other Cape Cod communities as well, where when we're seasonal, that 25-75 has, the impact isn't enough.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see if other places in the state, I would think that they're a little bit more equalized, that you don't see such a drastic difference in value between the affordable units and the market rate units, that it ends up being more of a cohesive year-round community.
I think you're right. We certainly have added into what is in the letter, commenting on we'd love to see greater affordability. And I think the developer is aware of that.
And I think, Don was sort of saying we could add to that. If we can and if it's appropriate, I think making a comment specifically, the 25-75 breakdown. I think 40Bs have been effective throughout the state, but I do think we're facing unique issues here. And a comment that I had on scanning through the revised, and this is speaking to a couple comments that were made here tonight, that I feel when it comes to the archaeological issues, the watershed issues, the endangered species habitat issues, the language it's shoulds and coulds, and we encourage. I think they should be musts. I think that an appropriate study, archaeological issues, must be conducted on the site, and watershed issues must be addressed, and endangered species habitats, we can't encourage the issuing agency to get a determination. We must. So, more into this. Oh, that's a difference.
You were sounding really intelligent, so you want to make sure. We want to make sure the people offside hear you.
I'll never be able to repeat that now.
I would say those 3 must again.
I think that particularly the 3 issues where I think the wording is too soft: archaeological issues, watershed issues, endangered species habitat issues. The wording shouldn't be encouraging and it needs to be, we must have all of those.
I think the point that you made about having, department heads weigh in with specific letters on impacts would, I think, be more powerful than a reference in a letter. But to have Mark talk about, what he's seen, I think that would be helpful too.
Hello, me again. I'd also like to ask, is there been any sort of long-term study for sustainability on Nantucket? Like how many units can we take? How many cars can we take on Nantucket? How many people can we take? I mean, I'd really like to know these numbers because right now with all these 40B projects, that is 5% of all the units hooked onto town water and sewer. Is that correct? How much more can we do of these 40B projects? And I'm not just saying that just 40B, affordable housing is bad because, I go through Safeton's Path and it is like my mother said, it's a great neighborhood, great people in there. I love it in my neighborhood. Love to have so many of my friends are in there. It's great. This is something completely different, and this is about long-term sustainability. If we're having 5% of the units being added to our total unit count just through 40B developments alone right now, to me, that is just so unsustainable, especially if you talk with Mark at the water company. He can tell you, he just said that the water pumps or the pumps are going 24 hours a day right now. So now all of a sudden you add 5% to that, they're still going to be going 24 hours a day. What's going to happen? What's going to give? The sewer system is failing right now. There is leaks, catastrophic leaks downtown. I mean, everything is failing. I mean, someone really has to do a sustainability study. Has there ever been a long-term sustainability? Can anyone answer? Like, what is the population? What's the Goldilocks population for Nantucket? How many cars can Nantucket hold, or how many units can Nantucket hold? Does anyone have this information?
I would doubt anyone does. You're speaking my language, but philosophically, there's at least half the town that doesn't believe in limitations and doesn't believe that we have too much. And they believe more is better and more cars are better and more building is better. So
I
half around, we have a
agree.
big split on that. And I think, if you read back the comp plan for 20 years ago, actually discussed some of those issues. We didn't really get to the bottom of it. And I think, as a community, I think if you ignore something, it only comes back worse. And I think, some of the things that are happening now are proof that it becomes back worse.
Right. So irresponsible behavior bores past. I mean, now we need to have some sort of sustainability study. If we're going to continue to growth like this, we need a study to say what we can and cannot do. We need to know how many cars, how many units, and how many people the island can hold before we just fill them all up in 1 quarter-mile area on South Shore Road with stations, with all these other 40Bs. So that's another thing I'd like you to look into. I really think it's kind of important.
I think you got to be careful about irresponsible. I think, people have tried. There's so much going on. I mean,
I do agree with you. I do notice now that I've been looking into this project, that since I read about it in the paper, there is a large split, in the town. One half wants to mine it.
Yeah.
Basically, there's one half of the town administration. I shouldn't say you at all, but it seems like they're into mining it for money. And I see that, and it does get frustrating. I'm sorry to say.
Well, no, it's all right. But I think it's also it's some of it you're fighting human nature, and so somehow we've got to find a way to to get people to realize what is in everyone's best interest, the common good, the commonwealth, the common good of this island, not the not necessarily what you're talking about.
Right.
So.
I think there.
Guys, we kind of, I'll let you say something quickly, but we did end the public comment portion.
Okay, just real
But-
quick.
Yes.
Karen Ober-Gomes. I live in Abrams Quarry. I just wanted to speak on behalf of the Wampanoag Indians. There is a Native American burial ground sitting right there that, I don't know, I've been here the past 30 years, and I just feel like that area is getting smaller. It used to be this like big field, and it's just getting pushed back. It's getting smaller, and it's right there. And also behind Sherburne's Commons, there is a Native American ceremonial site that we can see, and my children and I have gone back there respectively, and that abuts it as well. So I would like to have a must demand that the Mass Historic Commission come and have a study, an archaeological study, to make sure that there is nothing on that land that is going to be disrespected. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have a question on process. So this letter has to go out the 15th. Our next meeting is the 14th. Do we have time to revamp this, get it out to the public, vote on it, and then get it out on the 15th?
We can vote on it on the 14th.
Okay.
Yes.
I just didn't know where we're going to go from here, how it's going to work.
It'll really have to be.
We,
Can you hear me?
They turned you off, Jim.
it's not amplifying.
The green light's on, but it's not. But I'm yelling. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? There we go. Maybe somebody could. So I guess I lost my train of thought. Too much for
Process next Wednesday.
So we will be. What's going to be in our agenda packet for next Friday will have to be the final version. Is that correct? Or can we amend it on the floor?
We could amend it.
Okay, I just want so we will be talking about amending it during the meeting
No,
with our concerns.
we are going to have a meeting next Wednesday during the day at 12:30 to finalize the development agreement with Tacoma Green. If you all would rather do this at the same time, so there's a little bit more time if there were
That's a good
revisions
idea.
and we could ratify it that night.
That's a good idea.
So, and we can let everyone here know that now that we'll be discussing it. I'm not sure where yet. Do we have a room?
I asked for this.
This room, okay. So we'll be back here at 12:30 during the day next Wednesday to be discussing this and one other item.
And that's when we make the decision whether this is a letter of opposition or a letter of something less than that. And I guess I'd ask town council, what are the options therein?
If you look on the screen, in the letter now, in the third paragraph, what happened to it?
It's at the bottom.
The board reviewed that paragraph?
Yeah, I'm sorry. So you'll see there, it says, after reviewing the project, the board voted X to X to inform Mass Housing that the project as proposed is not appropriate for the property and is inconsistent with the master plan, and we cannot support it. So if the board wanted to, you could take that vote tonight. We could insert that into the draft, beef up the letter according to the comments that we've heard, and then you would approve the letter, finally approve the letter next Wednesday.
So I read that and I didn't get it as the statement of opposition. I read it as, I didn't, maybe that needs to be,
beefed up
and saying we are. It's up to the board, but I read the same thing and I didn't have the same conclusion.
Well, we can certainly beef that up, and if the board wants to take that vote, I think that would help give us direction over the next not quite a week to revamp the letter to make it stronger, basically. So,
Board ready to take that position?
I just, for discussion, I'll make the motion that this board is diametrically opposed to the Plan 40B at this time, as outlined in their application.
I'll second it let's just discuss it.
The only further comment that I would have is I do think that the biggest red flag in all of this are the water capacity issues. And I think that maybe should have a greater explanation. I had asked if irrigation was included in those 11 to 12 million gallons that were estimated. And I just think that we cannot, and this isn't just for this 40B. If 156 units is this big of a red flag, this is something much bigger. But I think especially in this project, we need to make sure that this isn't just, the water capacity is going to be one of our biggest limiting factors. And I think it should have adequate time in the opposition.
So just to go to the timing for a second. So the board needs to send in by next Thursday, and Mr. Busby, who this is going to at Mass Housing has indicated by email is acceptable and actually preferred. So there's no problem to discuss and finalize next Wednesday. As John indicated, I think we're really trying to get the direction from the board of the statement you want to make. And we can say anything. And we've certainly taken notes on the types of things that you've talked about and that audience members have talked about to include, but to get a real sense of maybe where the board is on the motion would be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I'm concerned that all of the environmental studies and archaeological studies have yet to be done in terms of even formulating a plan if there are things that need to be worked around and preserved. I'm concerned that there really has to be adequate parking and a parking management plan. I'm concerned that the net actual community benefit in terms of the 25% affordable units can be essentially canceled out by having, if they are 75% vacation home units. And I'd like to see some degree of further restriction, limitation on ability to summer rent these. That's the kind of thing. I mean, but overall, I think as most 40Bs have started out on this island, it's too dense to start with, and would hope to see a reduction.
I just add, in addition to all those things, and I don't know, I can't remember if it's in the letter, but if we can, some way to give preference to year-round residents for the condominiums and the large-scale apartment-type buildings. And there's some different options on how to do that.
I guess a question for the board is the board in favor of apartment buildings in that location? I mean, that's a policy question. I'm not in favor. I'm in favor of here. It's close to the Stop and Shop. It's close to, a lot of services. I'm in favor of it in the Mid-Island, if we could figure that out. I'm not in favor of it in the 1 and 2 acre zones. I don't think that that's appropriate. And so so I think that's, that itself, that's what 96 units is apartment buildings.
And that's what's hard as we're talking about this. It's hard to understand what all those issues are. I agree with you, but then I kind of take that as here's the proposal, and these are the things I don't like about it. But if we can kind of start from square one, that's a whole other perspective.
I think the condos are getting at, there's a need on the island for 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom ownership units. But I don't think this area, it should be in a more sort of that new urbanism that we talk about, 5-minute walking distance to the grocery store, not in a rural area, even though it's got the town overlay part of it. I think that it's rural, and condos are not.
Well, traditionally, we've done 1 and 2 bedroom units, but it's been like Dinsmore cottages at the, where they are. Or there's like 5 or 6 on Beachcomb cottages out on the way out to Cisco. Sort of the 4 that Housing Nantucket has done, or the 2, eventually there'll be 4. But I think, something like that, that's been traditionally how we've done it. We haven't traditionally done it downtown in the core. We've had condos and more density, but we haven't in the hinterlands. And I think that's when I look at it, that's a policy decision that I think is a mistake. I think we should be doing it in the right places. So
I'm not opposed to condos out there. Even if we could have condominiums in like Nantucket or that's not a condominium, but there's different ways to. That's a way to make to get around the cost of the land, and that makes it more affordable. Those cottages would be more affordable if they were condos, I believe. So,
yeah, but it's not the condos; it's an apartment building. Is what I look at it. But
so with Jim's motion, does that give Tucker and town administration what they need to go forward? Do we need to be more specific?
Do you need more from us?
Or town council?
John, Tucker?
If I may, Madam Chairman, I would recommend a motion based upon what I've heard that the board strongly opposes this project as proposed and directs town staff to draft a stronger letter, taking into account the comments from the public and the board tonight, and to bring a revised draft back to the board next Wednesday at 12:30. Obviously, we'll try to get it to you ahead of time so that you can review it before the meeting itself. But I think the essence is to strongly oppose the project as proposed.
And that's what the motion says. So.
Okay. Take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Eh,
So
and-
we'll reconvene next Wednesday at 12:30.
One question I have for that is in the midst of this, Ilana's going to be, the legal counsel's going to be involved helping to do it, correct, Tucker? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because however we write it has to be written in a way that's going to be helpful when it gets elsewhere. And so, my concern, we can oppose it, but if we oppose it, what is it that what is it that is acceptable? I think it should have a little bit of that tone as opposed to straight out oppose it and we're going to fight to the death, because whatever's going to be most effective to get the desired result.
It can't be opposition to any development.
That's
It
my point.
has
Right.
to
And I
raise the
So-
valid points. Were you going to say something?
No, I think there seems to be general consensus. It's not intended to say no to anything ever. It's really just this. Yeah.
So, if I may, there was mention of the Medfield decision, and that obviously is a very significant victory for the town. That was a project that was 3 times the height of the surrounding structures, but certainly from a density standpoint, in terms of the number of 40Bs in this area, I think we can build on that in the letter and try to come up with an opposition that is sort of consistent with what the concerns were in Medfield. It's not exactly the same, but that's what we'll endeavor to do with this letter.
And Medfield was tall. It was also, wasn't it, like the first thing you saw
Yeah.
coming into the town?
Right.
So there's some things that are going to be
And it was a
difficult.
very, very, very large apartment building.
It was-
three
30
times the
units
height
per
of the
acre.
surrounding buildings.
Yeah. So it has to be within context to have any success.
I think the undue burden to this neighborhood of 40Bs is a case we should make.
And the only other question, I guess, is how is town council going to be employed in the same manner as the last time? That was the only other, what's that?
Is 106, you mean?
Yeah, that was the only other thing that was sort of hanging from tonight.
In terms of going to the ZBA meetings, or is that what you're?
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's a discussion for later.
Yeah,
but
I think that's maybe advice.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Thank you. Number 2, we've taken off some of the items for Tacoma Green. Those are going to next Wednesday at 12:30 as well. But we did want to finalize the approval of the town letter of support for their getting the state financing and funding, if the board is so inclined.
So you need a motion? Just a
Please.
please make a motion to approve the town letter of support for state financing for Tacoma Green.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. So we'll endorse that letter. And determination as to Town of Nantucket participation in opioid litigation effort to assist municipalities with the recovery of municipal costs resulting from the opioid crisis. This would be us signing on to this effort. It's not at any cost to us, and it would, it's basically a class action type of, do you want to describe it a little bit, John?
If I may, Madam Chairman, so KP Law was approached by the MOLA law group, and it's really a consortium of a number of lawyers who are bringing individual cases, they're not class action lawsuits, that are targeted at the manufacturers of opioids. And it really, the goal here is really a 2-step process in the litigation. One is to establish liability, and then the second phase would be, well, what are the damages? So when you look around the town, and it's true in virtually every town, there have been significant costs incurred by the town as a result of the opioid crisis. There are sort of the hard costs, if you will, the cost to your public safety personnel, providing Narcan, dealing with specific incidents of overdoses, et cetera. So, EMS runs and that kind of thing. And then there's all the addiction and impact on social services throughout the town. And those are the kinds of costs and that this lawsuit will attempt to quantify and to recover some amount for the town. We have an article on the warrant. I'm just giving this as an example to deal with dedicating a portion of the marijuana tax for substance abuse programs. And if there is a recovery in this case, that may be the kind of thing you would want to think about expanding on in order to make sure that whatever you recover actually goes towards helping to solve the problem. So KP Law was approached by this group, and we were asked to be local Massachusetts council, municipal council, because frankly, we understand the municipal sphere, and we can provide, as we did with the MBTE litigation, advice to our municipal clients as this litigation proceeds. So there is no cost to the town. It would be a typical contingency fee, but they would be individual cases because everyone's costs are going to be different. And so if you are interested in signing on, I would ask that the board take that vote. And there is a legal services agreement in your packet, which the board could authorize the chair to sign. And we will be, of course, monitoring this, making sure the town's interests are protected throughout the litigation.
Does anyone have questions?
I guess, so there's no cost to the town, so this is on a contingency basis.
Correct.
By the legal, what does MOLA get, or what do you guys get?
Well,
What's the split on these?
the fee is the standard 25% of what's ever recovered after costs.
Right.
And obviously, we're not going to reap anywhere near that amount because we're not going to be the lead trial counsel or deal with. Our job is to be local municipal counsel. And so we will get our fee out of a small portion of what's actually.
Yeah, you're the local license, and they're the big guys, more or less.
Well, we're pretty big, but
You're big, but
they're the experts in this particular
field. So,
area.
yeah.
So I'd make a motion that we sign the letter of, what did you call it?
It's a legal services
Legal-
agreement,
legal
and the way I
service
set it up,
agreement for
I
this
have it for Dawn to sign, but the board should authorize her to sign it.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, John.
Okay, last thing is committee reports. Anybody got anything?
I got nothing.
I'm sure I do, but I can't think straight right
Well,
now.
Libby mentioned it earlier about our hire for the island home, and I just wanted to say that I'm really excited and can't wait for him to get here. I think it's going to be great. And then hopefully we can start proceeding further with long-term plans for the future of our island home.
Yeah, and as Lauren mentioned, we have had two meetings with different potential leasers for the wind sites, the wind power sites, which have been going. They've been going better and better as we're getting more accustomed to finding out what they're interested in and how we would benefit from the projects, where the money would go, how much it would be. So that's been going well. And as Libby mentioned as well, the coastal resiliency plan. I think it'll be great to have the opportunity to have an April and July public outreach so that we really capture both demographics, seasonal and year-round.
Great. Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Yep. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
I'm just trivia.